What if the best draft in Dallas Cowboys history is already written on the board, and all Jerry Jones has to do is not screw it up? One of the most disruptive pass rushers in college football is sliding down boards right toward pick 12, and the Cowboys may not have to spend a single extra asset to land him. A linebacker trade that has been openly called the most logical move available is being pushed by one of the sharpest voices covering this team. A former 4th overall pick at tight end is being connected to Dallas in a deal that would turn this offense into something defenses genuinely cannot blueprint. And a sleeper linebacker who just completed top 30 visits at the Star recently told the entire football world that he carries more upside than every other player in this draft class combined. Pittsburgh is 7 days away. The board is setting up. The opportunities are stacking. Let's get into every single one of them right now, because this week deserves your full attention. The dream scenario at pick 12 is gaining serious momentum, and right now, Rueben Bain Jr. out of the University of Miami is generating the kind of draft slide conversation that should have Cowboys Nation locked in and wide awake. Mel Kiper Jr. of ESPN addressed it directly during a conference call with reporters. In Kiper's evaluation, Bain is a top 14 selection in this draft. That projection places one of the most productive and relentless pass rushers in college football squarely in range for Dallas without any requirement to move up, burn future capital, or take on any additional risk whatsoever. The Cowboys can sit at 12, trust the process, let the chaos at the top of the board unfold naturally, and simply receive the gift that the draft gods may be about to deliver. The slide conversation has been building for weeks, and it is rooted in two specific concerns that have caused teams picking earlier in the first round to reconsider their evaluation. The first issue is arm length. Ruben Bane Jr. measured with shorter arms than what most NFL franchises prefer when projecting an edge rusher to the next level, and that measurement has been enough to knock him out of the top 10 in the eyes of several organizations. The second issue is significantly heavier in terms of public profile. A report surfaced connecting Bain to a fatal car accident that occurred in 2024. He was initially charged with careless driving in connection with that incident before the charge was subsequently dropped. Both of those elements are real. Neither is being invented or exaggerated by the media cycle. And both are actively contributing to the realistic possibility that one of the most talented defensive players in this class could still be sitting there when Dallas walks to the podium at pick 12. So let's talk about what the actual tape shows, because the tape is the only argument that matters when you're deciding whether to put a player in your building. In his final college season at Miami, Rueben Bain Jr. produced 54 tackles, 15.5 tackles for loss, 9.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 interception. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. He was a consensus All-American. He wins at the line of scrimmage with pure power and violent hands that shock blockers before they can ever get properly set. He plays with a nonstop motor that does not distinguish between the first quarter and the fourth. He can align at the wide 9 technique and attack from the outside edge, or he can slide inside and become an interior disruption machine on passing downs. That kind of positional flexibility is precisely what defensive coordinator Mike Zimmer needs when building a defensive scheme that keeps offensive lines guessing about alignments and responsibilities on every single snap. CBS Sports drew the comparison to Dwight Freeney, a Hall of Fame pass rusher who terrorized the NFL for over a decade by mastering leverage, bend around the corner, and a devastating spin move rather than relying on prototypical length or measurables. Freeney proved definitively that arm measurements do not sack quarterbacks. Technique, motor, and the ability to finish plays do. Ruben Bain Jr. operates from that exact same blueprint. For a defense that finished last season ranked 30th in the entire NFL and is desperately searching for a player who forces opposing offensive coordinators to spend the entire week restructuring their protection calls, getting Bain at pick 12 without giving up one additional asset is the kind of outcome this fan base should be losing sleep over in the best possible way. This is a legitimate top 10 talent. If he falls to Dallas, there should be zero hesitation at the podium. Now let's address the wound that has been openly bleeding on this roster for the entire offseason, because the linebacker position has been the most glaring and most embarrassing unresolved problem on this team since the moment free agency opened. The name being pushed hardest as a solution right now is Jordyn Brooks out of Miami, and the voice pushing it hardest is one of the most credible in the Cowboys media space. Dave Hellman of The Athletic appeared on 105.3 The Fan in Dallas and laid out the transaction with complete clarity. Send the third-round pick at number 92 to the Miami Dolphins for Jordyn Brooks. If a little additional compensation needs to be included to get the deal across the finish line, included. Lock Brooks up on an extension the moment he lands. And suddenly this defense has a legitimate answer at a position that has been a revolving door of failure for 3 consecutive seasons. Hellman was not subtle about it. He presented it as the first and most important move Dallas should make before the draft even begins. And he is correct. The Cowboys did not fail to address this position for lack of effort. They made legitimate, documented attempts in free agency. The team pursued Devin Lloyd. They chased Quay Walker. Nakobe Dean was a target. Trade conversations took place involving Patrick Queen, Jordyn Brooks himself, and Azeez Al-Shaair of the Texans. Every single one of those avenues closed before Dallas could complete anything. The linebacker room remains starved of proven, dependable talent heading into draft week, and that is simply not a tolerable situation for a franchise that has spent the entire offseason proclaiming its readiness to compete at the highest level. Jordyn Brooks is not a Band-Aid solution or a name being floated out of desperation. He is coming off one of the most statistically dominant linebacker seasons in the entire NFL. Pro Football Focus ranked him the 3rd best run-stopping linebacker in the league last season. He led the entire NFL in solo tackles with 99 and led the entire NFL in combined tackles with 183. That performance earned him his first career All-Pro selection. Over the last 3 seasons, he has appeared in 83 games without losing meaningful time to injury, for a position that has been genuinely cursed in Dallas ever since. Leighton Vander Esch's career ended prematurely due to a neck injury. That durability track record alone is worth significant value. The Dolphins are not competing in 2026. That point does not need debate. Tua Tagovailoa was cut. Tyreek Hill departed. Jalen Waddle was traded away. Miami is in full reconstruction mode, collecting draft assets and building toward a future that is multiple years away. They have no practical use for Jordyn Brooks in a win-now context because there is no win-now context in South Florida right now. The Cowboys have picked 92 sitting right there on the shelf, a 3rd-round selection acquired through the OSA Odigizua trade with San Francisco. This deal works from every possible angle. The price is fair. The timing is aligned. The urgency in Dallas is real. The one legitimate question surrounding Brooks is whether he can operate as the green dot linebacker, the designated helmet speaker player who serves as the defensive quarterback and processes protections in real time before the snap. His game has historically been built more around sideline-to-sideline athleticism and production after the snap than true pre-snap command of a defense. That distinction matters, and it deserves honest acknowledgement. But even if Brooks never fully grows into that role, his run-stuffing dominance and proven 3-year durability would transform this linebacker core into something functional overnight. The Cowboys have needed that for far too long to keep waiting for the perfect player. One more detail worth knowing before moving on. Jordyn Brooks was a 1st-round pick of the Seattle Seahawks back in 2020. Brian Schottenheimer was Seattle's offensive coordinator at the time. Shared history between a player and a head coach carries real weight when it comes to the kind of trust that allows a veteran to step into a new environment and contribute immediately. Ruben Bane Jr. landing at 12 without costing Dallas a single additional asset. Jordyn Brooks arriving from Miami in exchange for a 3rd-round pick that plugs the most embarrassing hole on this roster. 2 completely separate wins. 2 different timelines. 2 different ways this team gets meaningfully better heading into the season. Which scenario has you more fired up heading into Pittsburgh? Let everybody know down in the comments right now. Smash the like button if you genuinely believe Dallas executes both of those moves before the weekend is finished. And stay locked in because the next name on this list involves a trade that could change the entire identity of what this offense does to defenses every single Sunday. The conversation is happening at full volume, and Kyle Pitts out of Atlanta is being specifically linked to Dallas in an in-draft trade that would immediately expand the ceiling of this entire offensive operation. Fansided's Jake Beckman published the full breakdown. The Atlanta Falcons are open to moving Pitts. Dallas carries a substantial inventory of draft capital. The fit is logical for both organizations in ways that are hard to dismiss once you actually think through the details. Beckman stated it plainly, noting that there are numerous teams around the league that could make productive use of a player at Pitts' level and would almost certainly get far more out of him than Atlanta has managed to extract over the last several seasons. That observation is not controversial. It is just an accurate assessment of what has unfolded in Georgia since 2021. Kyle Pitts was selected 4th overall in the 2021 NFL Draft and arrived in the league carrying one of the most extraordinary tight end prospect profiles that evaluators had seen in years. The athleticism was elite. The size was elite. The receiving ability and route-running sophistication were elite. The production has been uneven due to a combination of injuries and a genuinely chaotic quarterback situation in Atlanta that has cycled through multiple starters without ever providing Pitts with the kind of stable, accurate throwing partnership that allows a talent at his level to fully realize what he is capable of. The talent itself has never been the problem. The talent has always been there. Now actually picture what Kyle Pitts brings to the Cowboys offense as it currently exists. Dak Prescott is one of the most accurate passers in the NFL when healthy and properly supported. CeeDee Lamb draws legitimate top-cover attention from every defense on every single snap because there is no acceptable alternative to rolling coverage his direction. George Pickens stretches the field vertically and commands respect deep, creating underneath space that compounds the problems for opposing secondaries. Kyle Pitts working the seam in the middle of the field inside that environment, with defenders already committed to accounting for Lamb outside and Pickens deep, becomes a matchup problem that simply does not have a clean solution. Jake Ferguson has been a serviceable starter at tight end. Serviceable is fine, but this offense does not need fine. It needs a genuine weapon who can change games by himself when the opportunities present themselves. Kyle Pitts is that player. The cost conversation is where this deal gets complicated in a way that requires honest evaluation. Beckman laid out the range directly. A Pitts trade could command a first-round pick outright, or it could be structured as a package of 4 to 5 selections, depending entirely on how both front offices approach the negotiation. Dallas holds picks at 12 and 20 in the first round, plus multiple day 3 options that provide legitimate flexibility. Beckman specifically identified the moment of opportunity. If Atlanta's new general manager Ian Cunningham hears that a team is attempting to trade up for Kenyon Sadiq, currently the only tight end in this class with a legitimate first-round grade, and that trade falls apart before it can be completed, that is precisely the window to call Dallas and offer Pitts as the alternative solution. The timing is available. The talent is available. The only variable remaining is whether Jerry Jones decides this is the move he wants to make. Now shift your attention to a name that almost nobody outside the deepest pre-draft circles is currently discussing, because the Cowboys already brought this player in for a formal top 30 visit to the Star, and the profile is genuinely worth understanding before Pittsburgh arrives. Jaden Duggar is a linebacker out of Louisiana, and he represents exactly the kind of high-ceiling, low-cost, late-round investment that Jerry Jones has built an entire reputation discovering before the rest of the league figures out what they passed on. SI's Justin Mello identified Duggar as his personal favorite sleeper in this entire draft class. Once you actually examine what the profile contains, it becomes very difficult to challenge that designation. Duggar's path to this point in his football career is unlike virtually anything else in this draft. He began at Georgetown, an FCS program, where he spent time as both a wide receiver and a defensive back before eventually converting to linebacker. He transferred to Louisiana, and in 13 games last season, he posted 125 total tackles, led the entire Sun Belt Conference with 64 solo tackles, delivered 4 sacks, including one against Power 4 program Missouri, recorded an interception, and added 3 passes defensed. He earned first-team All-Sun belt recognition for that performance. He stands at 6'5" and weighs 242 pounds with 35-inch arms and the fluid movement patterns of someone who spent his formative athletic years playing skill positions. That physical combination simply does not appear at linebacker very often, and when it does, organizations that recognize it early tend to benefit enormously. Duggar's performance at the East-West Shrine game accelerated his pre-draft momentum significantly. He competed against higher-caliber talent for the first time at that event and proved he belonged. He was voted the best player in attendance. He was recognized as the top linebacker at the game. That recognition carried straight into his pro day, where he ran a 4.60 in the 40-yard dash and recorded a 7.00 three-cone time at his size, numbers that validate the athleticism the film already suggested. Dallas is far from the only organization that has taken notice. Duggar confirmed directly to Justin Mello that he has received top 30 visits from the Cowboys, Packers, Colts, Chiefs, and Jets, with additional Zoom sessions involving the Falcons, Ravens, Giants, Texans, and others. When that many NFL personnel departments are investing formal FaceTime with a player projected as a late-round selection, it means scouts across the league are seeing something on the film that the public rankings have not yet caught up to. The full, honest picture deserves to be stated clearly. Dane Brugler of The Athletic currently projects Duggar as a 7th-round pick. Pro Football Focus has him rated around 340th in the overall class, which places him near or in undrafted territory. The small school background, the recent position conversion, and the technical rawness that naturally accompanies someone still learning the foundational elements of linebacker play all factor into those projections. None of that should be dismissed or waved away. These are qualified evaluators conducting serious analysis. But here is the argument for why none of that is disqualifying when the investment is nothing more than a late-round pick at the very bottom of the draft. Jaden Duggar is still in the absolute earliest chapter of his development as a linebacker. His college career did not begin at linebacker. It began at receiver and safety. The ceiling on a 6'5", 242-pound former skill position athlete with 35-inch arms who has already recorded a 125-tackle season in just his second year legitimately playing the position is genuinely impossible to project with any confidence. There's no established template for a profile this unusual at this earliest stage of development, and that ambiguity cuts both ways. The floor is real, but so is the ceiling, and the ceiling is what makes this interesting. Jaden Duggar himself is not losing any sleep over where the draft boards have him ranked. He told Justin Mello directly that he carries more upside than any other player in this draft class. He stated clearly and without hesitation that Pittsburgh represents the worst version of himself that any NFL team will ever evaluate. He is already producing against competition that draft boards have positioned significantly ahead of him. That has not performed confidence for the cameras. That is the mentality of a player who has already made one dramatic transition successfully and genuinely believes the best of his football is in front of him rather than behind. This Cowboys locker room has absorbed enough losing, enough disappointment, and enough quiet acceptance of mediocrity. A player who backs his self-belief with production is exactly the kind of energy this building needs at every level of the roster. Pittsburgh arrives in 1 week. Every single opportunity discussed in this video is real, and every single one of them is actionable right now. Ruben Bane Jr. sliding to pick 12 without costing Dallas one additional asset will be the single greatest value acquisition of this entire draft weekend. Jordyn Brooks crossing the bridge from Miami in exchange for a third-round pick would fix the most embarrassing positional void on this roster in a matter of hours. Kyle Pitts lining up in the seam alongside C.D. Lamb, with Dak Prescott operating the offense, would create a set of problems that defensive coordinators around the NFC cannot solve with any conventional answer. And Jaden Duggar as a late-round bet on untapped, still developing, genuinely uncapped upside could end up being the most valuable pick of the entire three-day event when evaluated 5 years from now. The defense finished last season ranked 30th in the NFL. That number does not get to follow this franchise into another year without consequences. No more explaining it away. No more pointing to injuries and circumstances and bad luck. Jerry Jones has the draft capital. The board is constructed in a way that rewards boldness and patience in equal measure. The talent is sitting there. The trade pieces are assembled. Every condition for a genuinely transformational draft weekend is present. The only thing left is the decision. Drop your take in the comments. Tell everyone reading which move gets you the most fired up. Tell the Cowboys front office exactly what you expect from Pittsburgh this weekend. This community belongs to every single person who has ever stood up, locked eyes with a screen, and reminded the rest of the football world exactly who America's team is. Tomorrow we keep building.